Welcome back. Well, before they prepare to flee through their ridings for the Thanksgiving break week, 3 MPs from the major parties have pit stopped here to talk political turkey. Karina Gould is a Liberal MP. Karen Vecchio is a Conservative MP. Tracy Ramsey is an NDP MP. Welcome to you all.
Thank you, Don.
We've got about 200 special forces helping our Kurdish allies in northern Iraq. We're told this is a non-combat role, but man, it sounds like we're exchanging gunfire with ISIS and we're not in the classrooms anymore. Is this sort of a hint of where we're going to end up with these peacekeeping forces going forward? Because it sounds like, they're basically in the combat muck.
Are you asking me first? Okay, great. Well, I think the technical briefing was pretty clear today, and it was important to, be open and transparent with Canadians about the mission in Iraq and Syria.
They were pretty secretive about.
Well, but we also have to make sure that we're protecting our men and women in uniform as well, right? Because it is active and there is ongoing. It's not a combat mission, but it has moved, and the CAF was very clear about this, from a training to an assistance mission. So that does mean that yes, our forces are on the ground. We cannot mitigate every single risk. However, they are highly trained, capable individuals that are there, and they're doing really important work in the region to fight against ISIS.
Looks like looks like combat, sounds like combat. Is it combat?
Absolutely. It sure does sound that way. And we've heard, with northern Iraq and different things happening up there in the last few days, people have come out and said it's going to become more dangerous as we continue with this mission. We need to make sure that our men and women are prepared, that they have all of the security and all of the needs through our Canadian Armed Forces that are available to them. And also, these are not just our men and women, these are daughters and sons, husbands and wives. And what we're doing is, this government, I recognize she says they have been transparent. They've been on the front lines for some time now. It just didn't happen today, and Canadians need to know this.
I wonder, I think it was your leader sort of coined the mission creep idea. That's the concept that's been out there. Are we creeping in this mission?
Absolutely. This is the debate that we had in February in the House. We were deeply concerned that this actually was a combat mission, that people were going to be on the front lines, be endangered, and we feel that the government was not upfront with Canadians and said this is only a train and assist. If the train and assist mission is waning down, then bring the Canadians back home. We owe it to them. We have a duty of responsibility to the men and women that we send overseas to be upfront with what they're going to face, and train and assist is very different than what we hear being reported today.
I'm curious about one thing that's sort of related to this. Yesterday, the NDP put forward a motion to condemn Islamophobia. Yes. They needed unanimous consent, and the Conservatives stopped it. Why?
Well, I can say that I would have supported. The only thing I see an issue here is the procedure. So I don't think there's anyone in our party or any other party that would say that there's a problem with not promoting and supporting this. But at the same time, there is procedural things that need to be done, and a motion in the House through a petition is not the way to do it. I understand what this was, but at the same time, I can tell you I support the fact that we need to make sure that there's not this phobia that's going on.
Was it a trap?
But at the same time...
Well, I can tell you that I did watch Candace Bergen, who was our House leader, quickly speak to the House leader of the government, who said, you told us you weren't supporting this. And 24 hours later, they supported it. So was it a trap? I don't know. I wasn't in those rooms. I wasn't in that briefing. And at that time, they changed their mind in 24 hours, but who knows?
I can say that, as a motion comes to the House as MPs in the way that it does, we have an individual responsibility to respond to it. It wasn't a direction that we received. I personally didn't know the motion was coming, but of course, when I heard it, and I know my colleagues, when they heard it, we obviously do not stand with Islamophobia, and we stand with a country that's inclusive and diverse, and there were MPs on the Conservative side who said no to this. And for me, that's something that, as an individual representing people in your community, you should not have any qualms about standing in that House, sitting in that House, and accepting a motion against Islamophobia.
I assume you agree?
Well, Don, this is a motion that we brought forward. The NDP feels strongly that this needs to be addressed in Canada. We had tens of thousands of people signing this petition.
60,000.
Yeah, this is a huge number of Canadians that want to see this happen and want to prevent Islamophobia in all of our communities. And to see the House kind of fall apart over that is very disappointing. Of course, we couldn't necessarily hear the no's, but clearly the Speaker did. And they came from the Conservative benches. But what was shocking to me was even how quiet it was on the Liberal side. We screamed loudly yay in support of this motion, and we really feel strongly that something needs to be done. Now, as far as we know, it's back to us, and we'll continue to have more signatures coming forward, and when we reach a proper threshold, we'll be bringing it back before the House
Then
again.
you guys will support.
I would be happy to sign it today. That's where I stand on it. I'd be happy to sign it today. Not a problem.
Moving along.
Go
Trick
ahead.
or no trick, we're going to move along. It was a weird thing today. I didn't quite understand what this was all about. Points of privilege were raised in the House after question period about Stéphane Dion giving a gesture of some kind. Fill us in. What happened there? You saw it.
Well, I fortunately sit across from that area, and Michael Cooper, who's one of our members of Parliament, was talking about the family and talking about the dear woman whose children are still and have been taken away from her
Alison
that are now in
Aziz,
Iran,
yeah.
right? That was brought up. The gesture was 2 thumbs down that we saw from the Foreign Affairs Minister. We stood up and asked for an apology, and following that, it was great to see a member of the NDP stand up and say that's what we're asking for is an apology here, because we have to recognize this is somebody's these are people's children and grandchildren, and come on, how inappropriate. And he would not apologize, and it continued and continued and continued, and I'm quite embarrassed by the reaction of our Foreign Affairs Minister on that.
I'll get to you, Tracy, in a second. I just want to get some clarity. Can you explain what happened there? Because it doesn't sound like Stéphane Dion to go thumbs down on
I have
like
to
this.
say, Don, that from where I sit, I couldn't see anything happen. What I could see was the opposition getting
But he doesn't deny it, though.
very aggressive.
No.
If I can't speak for him because I'm not him and I didn't do anything, but I imagine that if he did do anything at all, it was in reaction to the heckling from the other side. However, the important thing to remember is that our government is committed to engagement. We're committed to working for families, to making sure that we're protecting Canadians abroad. Today Mr. Garrett was in the House. Omar Al Gabra,
So
who's the
was Alison
parliamentary
Aziz.
secretary.
I'm sorry that you have to stand up for him. That's terrible.
It's Canadians should rest assured that their government is working hard for them, and the Azar family, for whom we feel deeply, and I can't imagine what she's going through,
Right.
needs to know, and we hope that she does, that we are working very hard to bring her children back
I
home.
think you're turning thumbs down on that explanation.
I am. You know what? It was an embarrassment from a minister of the Crown, to be quite honest. And
She
it's
was there, right? She was in the gallery?
indefensible.
Okay.
She was there. I saw her afterwards. I gave her a hug. This woman has been through hell and back, missing her children, with inaction from this government. We've had repeated calls from our side of the House to the government with no response. This behavior is not acceptable from a minister. It's inexcusable. And the opposition was not aggressive. The opposition was passionate because they're standing up for a Canadian who's missing her children.
Well, it's not it's inexplainable. It's inexplicable because that's just not, doesn't make any sense. Nothing lines up. Dion, thumbs down, human rights case like this. So maybe we're misinterpreting.
It's inexcusable.
I think it's important, though, for Canadians to understand that we are working hard. These are very difficult situations, and I know for a fact that the minister and the parliamentary secretary are engaged and care about
That
this.
behavior does not help.
I guess I don't understand why, if you're sitting there and you've been challenged on something, why Dion didn't just stand up and say, "Well, no, I didn't mean that." Instead, he says, "I meant it."
Yeah.
And then he
Absolutely.
he was told what he did. So I'm not going to ask you to explain because you
Yeah.
can't. You're not him. But moving along, you're heading off to your ridings for a week break, right?
Yes.
A work week,
A
Dawn.
work week. I know. A break from this place. Though. You can recover from your broken elbow. I guess I want to get some thoughts from you. How do you explain to your constituents the carbon tax, how it's going to impact them, and how the province is going to make sure that your money isn't just thrown into a giant revenue pot? How are you going to do that, Tracy?
It's very difficult because I think that Canadians are very divided. Before this bill came before the House, certainly what I'm hearing in my riding are concerns from farmers. I'm hearing concerns from environmentalists. I'm hearing youth. I'm listening to all perspectives. And I think it's important that we sign on to the Paris Accord. I wish that our amendment to include Indigenous people would have been included because they're critical to this conversation, and the people in my riding of Essex would certainly support that. So I'm looking to have those further conversations with them, and each province is going to adopt their own measure. If they don't, then obviously the government has said they're going to impose that on them. So in provinces that will be affected, it's going to be a much more difficult conversation.
Karina, you're in Ontario, as is Karen, where there's going to be a cap and trade system that may not be quite parallel to a carbon tax, but how do you explain what this means to the average person? Because Ontario's hasn't kicked in really yet; it's still to be phased in. How do you explain to them what this matters to them and why we should trust the Ontario government to spend our carbon tax revenue wisely?
Well, I think what's important is to recognize that we need to have a national strategy. And myself, like many other members of Parliament across the country on all sides, held town halls this summer. And I heard very loudly and very clearly from people in my constituency that they wanted a price on carbon pollution. They want to address climate change, and they understand that we need to change behaviors. And we also need to make sure that we're putting that revenue to good work. And so for me, it's something that I've actually heard from my constituents, and I'll continue to engage with them because at the end of the day, climate change is about all of our futures. We have one planet, and we need to do what we can to protect it.
You nodding in agreement.
No, I agree with the Paris Accord. I agree with the Paris.
Your party didn't.
Yeah. No. What we did not agree with was the Vancouver Accord. And the reason that was we recognized that we had provinces immediately come out and say, we cannot support this. And both the Prime Minister and other premiers have different feelings on what they said and spoke of that day. I sorry, Tracy. I, like Tracy, live in a rural area. You know, we have farmers. We have, it's called IGPC. It's Integrated Grain Processors. And we have them there. And I've asked him, I went out to Jim Gray and said, what are your thoughts? And he said, they just didn't do it the right way. And, you know, the biggest thing we talk about, when we talk about Ontario, when you say trust, I have to giggle. You know, we talk about trust, so we're going to be giving them money. And we have seen money spent here in Ontario so frivolously. How are we going to know that it's going to actually have an impact on our environment?
Right.
That is a huge concern for me.
All right, we'll find out. It's a work in progress. Thank you all. Have a good work week in your riding.
Are you mocking me?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. All right. Coming up, we head